So the call went out for a game of Rangers of Shadow Deep. I had my rulebook on my army list. Now I need models. So I'm not finding anything in my box of 3D prints. Maybe I could print something new. Unfortunately, the 3D printer's broken. No idea what I'm gonna do. Ah, Zombicide. I was reminded I had a whole back catalogue of models that came with the games. It was a simple case of going through the models and picking out some gems for my warband. Question is, who should be painted first? There was only one choice. This is Johan. He's a cracking model. So let's get him battle ready. So I like all my models on these 30mm bases. Unfortunately, he won't quite fit, so it's a case of having to trim a little bit round the edge of his plastic base. The trick is to not be as excessive as me and just take a couple of mil from the edge of the base, just enough to get it to fit. Ideally without losing a finger or maybe an eye. You'll be finding these offcuts for days, but there we go. Next I had to remove the worst of the mould lines. This soft plastic can often shred rather than file nicely. I scored the underside of the model to make sure the glue could get in, and then I was on to gluing him to his base. I could have clipped him and pinned him directly to the base, but I kind of wanted something a bit more solid. I don't hold back on the glue either. I want to make sure he ain't going anywhere. Now, because I was heavy-handed with the clippers, I need to fill in the gaps and make sure that the original model blends in a bit more with the base. Also gives me a foundation for some texturing. So I tried this stuff, Earth Texture by Vallejo. The other stuff I normally use is a lot thicker, but it had run out, so I thought I'd give this a go. I literally dumped it on there and then used an old brush to spread it around, trying desperately not to get any on the actual model itself. We will see how that turned out. It's looking good. I don't want this to be an in-depth painting tutorial. I think you people have got more interesting things to do. But I just want to show the overall process, and I'm going to use the cloak to demonstrate that. Starting with a base coat of Rhinox hide over the top of a black undercoat. I'm going to give it 2 or 3 thin coats with my scrubby paintbrush just to make sure that we get a good coverage. I'm not being in any way careful here, I am literally slapping this paint on just to make sure that it's all going on properly. Got to make sure every last bit of this cloak is covered. I don't want to find any gaps later on in the process. So with the base coat still a little bit wet, I come back in with a nice clean brush this time and a little bit of watered down Mournfang brown. I'm literally just whizzing over the top level highlights, all the raised areas. I want to get rough coverage, just trying to develop some contrast here. It's going to be a slow process, but again I'll probably do 2, maybe 3 layers of this just to make sure that it's solid. I'm not doing any blending per se because the original base coat was still wet. The paint naturally sort of blends together a little bit. And as I'm moving the brush around, it's sort of mixing the 2 colours together a little bit where they meet. So I've let that last coat dry thoroughly, and I'm coming in with a slightly lighter mix. I've added a bit of Zandri dust to the Mournfang brown now, and I'm being a little bit more particular about where I'm putting the paint. I'm leaving it on the very raised edges and just starting to define a few edges now. Again, I'm not a perfectionist. This is a very quick and dirty model, so I'm literally just trying to map a few bits out. We're going to add some washes later on, and it's going to really bring it all together. Taking it up a notch now. Again, I'd let that last lot dry. Got a bit more Zandri dust in here now. It's a 50-50 mix. Just keeping it nice and tight. Not overly perfectionist, as I say, but it's literally just a case of defining the very top edges. I'm using the edge of the brush rather than the point for the most part. These models are very, very nicely sculpted, so literally you can just run your brush along the edges and it's very, very easy. I'll probably do a couple of coats of this just to make sure that the colours are well established. And he's looking pretty good. I could take it higher, but this will do for now. Going to give them a quick brown wash with a bit of red in there just to tie these colours together, and then I'll move on to the rest of the model piece by piece, but we're going to fast forward to the end instead. So this is the model complete. All the base coats are on there, all the highlights are on there, everywhere's had a nice wash. It's looking pretty good, tabletop level. I'm going to give the whole model another wash of Agrax Earthshade, again just to tie all the individual parts together. Just make sure they all sort of feel like they're part of the same model. Again, quick and dirty. I'm not paying any real attention, apart from I don't want anything pooling too much in the recesses. This is just a quick once over. He's looking good. I need to let this dry now, then we'll move on to the next bit. This is a bit of an old school method, I admit, but I just wanted to try and separate some of the individual parts, add a bit of contrast, and just make a few pieces stand out a little bit more. This is a bit of a trial. I've never really done this before, but using Citadel contrast, I was hoping it wasn't going to look too stark. It was just going to help create a bit more of a shadow than anything else. And I'll let you be the judge of how successful that was. It's painstaking and, to be blunt, a bit of a pain. But we'll see. Personally, I think it worked really well. It did the job. So there he is, he's all sorted. I'm happy with that, he's good to go. Time to move on to the base. So this was a strange one. I was kind of making this up as I went along, there was no real plan. I started off with a base coat of Rhinox hide, because that's kind of pretty much what I always do. I then overbrushed it with Zandri dust, which was a little bit extreme. I kind of skipped all the middle layers and just went straight for the brightest highlight. As I say, it looks like he's in the middle of a desert, which I wasn't happy about. So I'm now about to soak the whole thing, literally drown it in Agrax Earthshade. It kind of pulls it back quite a bit. I was kind of happy with the result in the end. Now what you won't have seen is I decided after the fact that I wanted some grass on there, and so I added some Castellan green, just painted over it. I should have done that before I did the previous wash, but there we go. Once I'd done that, I'd even added a bit of moot green in there for some highlights randomly. No real reason for that. So again, I've drowned the whole thing in a bit of Camoshade, so we've now got a brown wash and a green wash over the top of that. Again, I'm trying to avoid the actual model himself as much as I can. I'm just trying to blend these two parts together. It's all a bit made up. I'm kind of winging it as I go, but that's fine. To finish, I'm using a bit of tacky glue to add some flock. It's going to hide some of the mistakes and make it look a little bit smarter, a little bit more polished. Then I'm going to give it a blast of matte varnish, and he's done. I'm using clump foliage here instead of grass. Just think it looks a little bit nicer. But let's be honest, this is a bit boring to watch, so I think we should just fast forward to the end. And here's my finished warband. They all use the same process that you've just seen here. As a team on the tabletop, they look really good. I don't think they hold up necessarily well up close and personal, but I'm happy with where they are. Apart from the eyes on my Ranger, they are terrible. I'm going to have to go back and fix them, I think. Time for a few glory shots from the game we played. The guys did well, they looked great on the table. Very, very happy with how this turned out. I've got a couple more people to add to the roster, and maybe we'll look at them again in the future. Just wanted to say thanks for watching. If you found this in any way educational or entertaining, then please do subscribe to the channel. It's going to help me get things kick-started. And I'll see you next time.